I never thought that a wedding invitation, or lack of one, would be the final betrayal. The email came at 7:12 p.m., 4 days before the wedding. Subject line: please watch via Livestream. I sat at my kitchen table, still in my house slippers, holding a cup of chamomile tea that suddenly felt too hot. I reread the line. Then again. Then again. It wasn't a mistake. My daughter, Rachel, had officially disinvited me from her wedding. No phone call, no explanation, no apology. Just a glossy, emoji-filled message like, I was one of her social media followers. Not the woman who raised her after her mother died. Not the woman who sat at the foot of her bed every night when she had night terrors at 11 years old. Not the woman who paid for ballet classes, braces, and a semester of college when her scholarship didn't cover everything. Just a live stream link and a reminder to dress up if you want to feel included. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I closed the laptop. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen. I looked like I always did. Tired, maybe a little softer around the edges than I'd like, but strong. Weathered, but not worn out. Rachel didn't want me there. I knew why. Not because of limited seating, as she claimed. Because of how I looked. Because I wouldn't wear the beige, shapeless dress she picked for me. Because I didn't fit into the curated Instagram wedding she was building. I wasn't beautiful enough. I wasn't quiet enough. I wasn't convenient enough. But I was done pretending. The next morning, my phone buzzed before 8 a.m. Text after text. Voicemail after voicemail. All from her. Mom, please call me. We need to talk. I didn't mean it like that. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't going to the wedding. I had work to do. And this time, I wasn't going to clean up her mess. I was going to show her what it looked like when the woman she thought was disposable picked herself up and walked away without a sound. 2 weeks earlier, she'd come by the house under the pretense of dropping off wedding favors. She hadn't even set her purse down before starting in on me. You haven't picked a dress yet, she said, digging through a tote bag like it contained the keys to the Vatican. I have a dress, I said simply, folding laundry on the couch. The navy one I wore to Clara's retirement. I like that one. She turned slowly, holding up something that looked like it had been cut from the lining of a beige coffin. This is the one I picked for you. I stared at it. That's not my style. Rachel rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. Then louder. I'm not letting you look like a bat at my wedding, Mom. A bat. That word lodged itself into my chest. I don't know why that was the moment, after years of swallowing her sideways comments, that it hit. Maybe because I was tired. Maybe because the truth was finally settling in. She didn't want a mother that reminded people of real life, of aging, of loss. She wanted a backdrop, a neutral shadow in beige, a prop. And I refused to be that. I folded the last towel and stood up straight. Then don't let me come, I said. Rachel blinked like she hadn't expected pushback. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. But I wasn't being dramatic. I was being honest, and tired, and fed up. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself some tea. She trailed behind me, still holding that awful dress like it had a say in my dignity. Just do this for me, she said, voice dipping into that wine she used when she wanted to get her way. Is it really that hard to not make everything about you? That's when it clicked. It was never about seating charts, or colors, or dress codes. It was about erasing me, piece by piece, until I was no longer visible. She left in a huff, beige sack and all, slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the frame. But I didn't run after her. I sat down with my tea, and I finally felt the silence. Not the lonely kind, the clear kind, the kind that comes right before you decide to stop being quiet. Rachel's cruelty didn't start with that dress. It had been creeping in for years. Little things, subtle at first, until it became routine. Expected. She forgot my birthday 3 years in a row, not even a text. But she remembered to post tributes to her friends, dogs on Instagram, happy heavenly birthday biscuit. At her bridal shower, one I wasn't even invited to help plan, she introduced me as my stepmom, technically, like I was some distant obligation. Her mother died when Rachel was 9. I married James a year later. I raised her. I packed her school lunches. I learned how to braid her hair. I sat through every single parent-teacher conference until she graduated high school. But somehow, I never made it into the official photo album of her life. I told myself for years that it was just her age, her stress, her independence. But the truth was uglier. The truth was whispered to me by my neighbor's daughter, Claire, after she bumped into me at the grocery store, holding a bouquet of peonies. "Oh, hey, Mrs. Lane. Are you excited for the wedding this weekend?" "I heard James's parents are flying in from Maine." I blinked. "James's parents?" She tilted her head. "Yeah!" Rachel posted about it. Said she was so happy her real family could be there. I stood in the frozen foods aisle, my hand hovering over a bag of mixed vegetables, and felt the air leave my lungs. Real family. James had died 7 years ago. I buried him. I handled every medical bill, every bank account. I sold the car. I cleaned out the garage alone. His parents hadn't even come to the funeral, and Rachel was flying them in, giving them seats, calling them real. I was invisible. I walked home with a bag of groceries I couldn't remember picking out. I sat on my porch and watched the street grow dim as the sun dropped behind the trees. For a long time, I said nothing, because I knew. The dress wasn't the first betrayal, it was just the most honest one. She wasn't ashamed of me because I was loud or rude or difficult. She was ashamed of me because I reminded her of everything she wanted to erase. The grief, the past, the version of herself that needed me. And if she wanted to pretend I never existed, I would give her what she asked for, but not in the way she expected. What Rachel forgot, or maybe never knew, was that I had more power than she imagined. She thought I was just Mom, the woman who folded laundry and overcooked Sunday roast. But she never looked beyond the apron strings. James and I weren't just a couple. We were partners. And when he passed, I didn't crumble. I got to work. Because I wasn't just the woman he left behind, I was the executor of his estate. I knew every asset, every policy, every clause in the trust he left for Rachel when she turned 30. He'd asked me to manage it until she got her feet under her. She was 34 now, and still, technically, under my oversight. And I'd kept records, old school hard copies, every statement, every email, every amendment. James had trusted me with the paper trail, and I'd never let it get cold. But even more quietly, I'd built something else. Tucked between PTA meetings and church potlucks, I'd taken a class on cybersecurity, half out of curiosity, half out of fear, after a local woman got scammed. That class led me to invest in a startup. Small, scrappy, based in Tucson. They called themselves Halcyon Security. 3 years later, Halcyon went public. And that silly little side investment turned into a high, 6-figure windfall. I didn't flash it around. Didn't buy a new car or remodel the kitchen. I just paid off the house, added it to my living trust, and kept my mouth shut. Rachel never asked about my finances. She assumed, like a lot of people do, that older women are either broke or confused. To her, I was backup, the one you call when your car breaks down, when you need help covering a deposit, when you want someone to pick up your wedding dress but not wear anything that draws attention. She thought she could uninvite me from her wedding like you cancel a grocery delivery. She thought I'd stay hurt, stay quiet, but I wasn't going to cry. I was going to call someone. Because Rachel had just committed a very expensive mistake. And I was done waiting for her to realize it on her own. The next morning, I called Joanna Ramirez. 17 years ago, James and I had walked into her office in downtown Mesa, holding a manila envelope and too many what-ifs. He didn't like thinking about death, but he liked leaving things to chance even less. Joanna had helped us write our wills, create the trust for Rachel, assign durable powers of attorney, all the things that no one wants to talk about until it's too late. She'd been my attorney ever since. When she picked up, her voice was the same, calm, dry, precise. "Dorothy," she said, "I was just thinking about you." "I need to talk about the trust," I said. A pause. Then, "You sure you want to open that box?" "She disinvited me from her wedding," I said flatly. "Via email. Told me to watch it online. Joanna didn't gasp. She never gasps. But I heard her click her pen. Her version of a raised eyebrow. All right then, she said. Let's return the favor. I was in her office by noon. I wore my navy dress, the one Rachel hated, and brought a folder of my own. I handed it to Joanna across her glass desk like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was a record of every transaction from the memorial fund Rachel claimed she, quote, hadn't touched. Joanna flipped through the pages, her mouth twitching. You've kept good records, she said. I raised a daughter who lies with a smile, I said. Of course I kept records. We got to work. Her assistant pulled the original trust documents from storage. I authorized a formal inquiry into the fund accounts. Joanna initiated a review of the trustee conditions. Something we'd never had to do before, because up until now, Rachel had played the part. Now she was off script. I'll need to notify her of the audit, Joanna said. She'll probably come running. I hope she does, I replied. It'll save me a stamp. As I left Joanna's office, the Arizona sun hit my face like heat from a kiln. My phone buzzed in my purse. Another call from Rachel. I didn't answer. Let her sweat. Let her call her florist and her planner and her fake tears. Let her plan a perfect wedding, wrapped in fraud and funded by a mother she tried to erase, because she'd made one critical mistake. She thought I had nothing left to lose. She forgot that I still held the pen. I've always believed that if you want to take your power back, you need a purpose sharper than your pain. So I wrote mine down, on a yellow legal pad, in blue ink, while sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a silence that no longer felt like loss, but strategy. My objective was simple. 1. Reclaim control over the trust James left Rachel. 2. Expose the misuse of the memorial fund she told me was sacred. 3. Force accountability. Either she told the truth and made amends, or she walked down the aisle under a mountain of lies. Joanna had already started her part. The legal gears were in motion. And once that machine starts, you can't unpull the lever. But this wasn't just about legality. This was about integrity. James didn't leave Rachel that trust out of obligation. He left it as a legacy, as a cushion, as a gift, something meant to honor his life and the people who had survived it. And she spent it on a flower wall. A damn flower wall. I'd seen the Pinterest board. She sent it to me months ago when she still needed my approval. I remember scrolling past photo after photo of dripping chandeliers and $10,000 cakes and reception halls that looked more like royal courts than celebrations of love. I thought it was a phase. I thought maybe she'd come to her senses. She hadn't. She'd taken money from a memorial account set up in James's name and funneled it into fantasy, all with my name still attached. That was her second mistake. The first was underestimating me. I went through my bank statements that night. Every deposit, every withdrawal. I pulled printouts, highlighted inconsistencies, flagged duplicates. And when I was done, I made a folder, labeled it with her name, slid it into my filing cabinet. It sat right next to James's death certificate and the original deed to this house. My house. The one she didn't want me to host the bridal shower in because the light wasn't great for photos. She wanted me invisible. But instead, I was turning into something else. Unavoidable. 3 days after I left Joanna's office, I got a text from her assistant. Check your email. Joanna found something. I opened the attachment on my laptop. PDF format. A florist invoice from a vendor I didn't recognize. Lavande Luxe Weddings full-service floral design client. Rachel Lane, amount due. $38. 200 payment method. Lane Family Memorial Fund authorized signer. Dorothy Lane. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I realized my jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. I never signed anything for Lavande Luxe. Never even heard of them. But there it was. My signature, perfect and smooth, lifted from God knows where. It looked like something from a check or maybe a form I'd signed years ago. Copied, pasted, forged, and used to pay for hydrangeas. I sat back in my chair, staring at the invoice. I could see the flowers in my head, oversized arrangements spilling out of copper urns, Pastel towers, meant to impress guests and look good in drone shots. They weren't for love. They weren't for remembrance. They were a performance, funded by a lie. Joanna called 10 minutes later. "We've got our first breadcrumb," she said. "And the trail's hot." I asked her how she found it. "Simple," she said. "We cross-referenced all vendors paid out of the memorial fund in the last 6 months. This one was the biggest red flag, and the only one requiring dual signatures. Rachel submitted it with a single authorization. The bank flagged it as incomplete, but it got pushed through manually." She paused. "Rachel's forging documents, Dorothy." I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. I wasn't surprised. I was done being surprised. "She's about to learn what happens when you try to erase the woman holding the receipts," I said. And I meant it, because this was only the first breadcrumb. I knew there'd be more, and every one of them would lead her straight into a room she wouldn't be able to lie her way out of. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was upset. I'd already grieved the daughter I raised. I was wide awake because I was angry and alert. And there's something dangerously effective about a woman who's both. At 4:17 a.m., I made a pot of strong coffee and sat down at my desk with the old-school binder where I kept all account information. No folders named Wedding or Rachel, just codes, numbers, handwritten notes in the margins only I could decode. I logged into the Memorial Fund's online portal and pulled up the transaction history. There it was, Lavande Luxe, $38, $200. But that wasn't the only one. I scrolled down. Another vendor, Taverna de Fiore, $6,000, labeled Vendor Prep. Another, Marina Ensemble Napa, $3, $850, also Vendor Prep. A third, Hearthstone Events, $11, $200, Vendor Prep. 11 transactions total, all within the last 5 months, all labeled like they were vaguely related to funeral arrangements. But none of them matched anything from the memorial I hosted for James. No invoices for that quiet little chapel in Sedona. No charges for the buffet I made myself. No mention of the local florist I paid cash to because she was retired and doing it as a favor. These charges weren't for his memory. They were for her moment. And every single one of them ran through an account I co-owned. I downloaded the PDF report. Backed it up twice. One copy to an external drive, another to a locked folder on my cloud account. Then I wrote a cover email to Joanna. Subject line, revocation grounds, misuse of funds. Attachments, memorial fund fraud.pdf. I hit send. Then I sat back sipping my coffee and realized something strange. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Because this wasn't some emotional mess I couldn't make sense of. This was a clean, legal paper trail. With timestamps, signatures, fraud. And unlike love, betrayal leaves footprints. Rachel had spent months stepping right through mine. And now I had the map. Rachel must have felt the shift. Because the next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 7:02 a.m. "Mom, I don't know why you're being like this. Can we talk?" 7:15 a.m. "I thought you'd support me. This day is supposed to be joyful." 8:03 a.m. "It's my wedding. Why can't you just love me?" She tried every tactic. Guilt, flattery, passive aggression. But I'd seen behind the curtain now. And I wasn't falling for the show. I didn't respond. By 9:20, she'd moved on to voicemail. Her voice was breathy, trembling. The kind of performance I used to fall for. "Mom, please, this is spiraling. I just need to talk to you before you make it worse." Make it worse? She forged my signature, stole from a trust in her father's name, and lied about it. But I was the problem? I put my phone on silent. By noon, she made her boldest move yet. Joanna called me, her voice calm, but edged with tension. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "She called you. Worse, she called my office pretending to be you." I felt my stomach drop. She tried to revoke the inquiry. "She what?" Joanna sighed. "Said she was Dorothy Lane and wanted to close the trust review due to a personal reconciliation. Told my assistant it was all a misunderstanding and not worth pursuing." My breath caught in my throat. "But we record all incoming calls, And we have caller ID, she called from her own number. Of course she did. Because Rachel was bold, but she wasn't smart. And now she was panicking. She's scared, I said. She should be, Joanna replied. Because impersonating a trustee during an active legal inquiry is a very serious offense. My hands were steady on the phone. She doesn't get to lie her way out of this. No, Joanna said, her voice tightening. Not anymore. I hung up and stood at the kitchen sink, watching a hummingbird flit across my lemon tree outside. Rachel was spiraling. She knew the audit was real. She knew I wasn't staying silent this time, and instead of apologizing, she doubled down. That was her third mistake. Because if she thought I wouldn't use every legal tool at my disposal to protect what James and I built, she was about to learn how wrong she was. 2 days later, Joanna's courier dropped another envelope at my door. I didn't open it right away. I made a cup of tea, sat at the dining table, cleared the space, because I already knew, once I opened it, there would be no more pretending this was a misunderstanding. Inside were 2 new documents. The first was a contract, cream cardstock, watermarked, embossed in gold. Lavande Luxe again, but not for flowers. Photography package, $12,000. Labeled under Bereavement Services Payment Source, Lane Family Memorial Fund Bereavement Services, for a photographer. I read the label 3 times, just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Rachel had filed her luxury wedding photographer under the same code we used for James's cremation expenses. The same fund that covered the modest chapel service and the memory book I made by hand. She buried her lies in our grief. The second document was a screenshot, a Venmo transaction log. Rachel, paying her maid of honor $500. The note? Say it was your idea. No context, no details. But enough. It was a cover-up payment, and she'd left the evidence sitting in her public payment history like it was a brunch bill. I copied both files onto my laptop, backed them up, printed extras. And then I sat there for a long time, staring at the paper, wondering what James would say if he saw all this. He used to worry about her, not because she was malicious, but because she was careless with people, with feelings, with truth. She wants so badly to be admired, he told me once, that she's willing to lie for it. Back then, I thought it was a phase. Now it was a blueprint. I laid out everything I had. The florist invoice, the catering deposit, the bogus vendor preps, the forged signature, the Venmo payoff, and now, this. The photography lie dressed in grief's clothing. It was no longer just personal. It was legal, traceable, actionable, and she had no idea what I was holding. But she would soon, because Joanna had scheduled a meeting, and Rachel thought it was just another formality, a fund release confirmation. We called it. She was walking straight into the room, and this time, I wouldn't be the one left invisible. Joanna called me the night before the meeting. Her voice was measured, but I could hear something different this time. A tremor. Not fear, not nerves, something heavier. Clara, we found something else, she said. My heart skipped. Is it about the florist? No, she said quietly. It's about the trust. I sat down, slowly. The word trust held too much weight now. More than money, more than paper. It was the last thing I'd tried to give Rachel, and the first thing she ever broke. What is it? Joanna exhaled. I could picture her at her desk, glasses low on her nose, piles of papers circled in red. James added a condition. It wasn't in the original version. This was an amendment he made just before his last surgery. You probably never saw it because it was filed directly through our office, separate from the estate. What kind of condition? I asked. There was a pause. If Rachel materially excludes you from any milestone life event, marriage, birth, inheritance decisions, the trust is frozen, and full control reverts to you, permanently. I didn't say anything for a long moment. The silence pressed into me like a second skin. James knew. I finally whispered. Joanna's voice softened. He must have seen the distance forming. He tried to build a guardrail. He thought she might do this, I said. Not with bitterness, not even grief, just clarity. And somehow, that hurt more. I stared out the window into the twilight. watching porch lights flick on across the street, families eating dinner, dogs barking in backyards. Normalcy. While I sat with legal proof that my husband had spent his final months quietly preparing for the day our daughter would betray me. I thought I'd cried all the tears I had left, but I felt one slide down my cheek, slow, warm, full of something that wasn't rage or sadness anymore. Recognition. He knew. He tried. And now, his voice was reaching back through time to hand me the last tool I needed. I didn't tell Rachel. I wanted her to walk into that meeting tomorrow thinking it was about one invoice, one bank account, a slap on the wrist. I wanted her to believe I was still the quiet mother waiting to be invited. Because what she didn't know yet, what she was going to learn the hard way, was that I didn't need her permission. I already had the power. That night, I sat in my sewing room with the lights off. Just me. And the quiet. And the boxes. I hadn't touched them since the fight over the dress. They just sat there, piled in the corner, like everything I'd hoped would bring us closer. Inside were 200 hand-folded origami flowers, pale blue, ivory, and gold, Rachel's wedding colors. I'd spent hours folding each one, my fingers cramped, my wrists sore, watching TV with the sound low, folding in silence while picturing her rehearsal dinner. She told me she wanted a personal touch. I thought maybe, just maybe, she meant it, but the dinner came and went. No invite, no thank you, not even a mention. A week later, she texted me a picture of a floral arch. Went with real flowers after all. But yours were cute! Cute! Like I was a preschooler bringing home a macaroni necklace. I opened one of the boxes now and ran my hand through the flowers. Paper rustling like memory. They were beautiful. They were intricate, deliberate, full of intention. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in that moment. I was grieving. Not James. I'd done that already. That grief was quiet, settled, like mist. This was something different. The grief of watching your child become someone who could discard you with a subject line. Someone who saw you as a cost, a complication, a child I raised, a child I would have protected from the world, who turned around and weaponized my love to build hers. I cried, not loud, not ugly, just still. I held one flower in my palm and imagined her walking down the aisle, smiling, surrounded by guests and flashbulbs, drenched in money she said she never had, a custom bouquet in hand, full of peonies and white ranunculus and someone else's labor, not mine. Mine sat in a cardboard box next to a broken pair of reading glasses and the wedding gift I never got to give, a delicate silver locket. Inside, a photo of her at 5, front tooth missing, and one of James holding her up on his shoulders. It was engraved with one word. Remember. I thought she would want to, but she'd made her choice, and tomorrow I'd make mine. Joanna scheduled the meeting for 10 a.m. sharp. Fund release confirmation, the email said. Simple, deceptive, non-threatening. Exactly what Rachel needed to see. We chose the boardroom. Long glass table, white walls, frosted windows. Clinical, unemotional. A space where people don't cry, they sign. Joanna told her to bring her fiancé. That was strategic. Let him see who he's marrying. They arrived right on time. She in a white jumpsuit, designer tight. Him in a navy blazer with boat shoes and sunglasses he didn't bother to remove. Rachel didn't look nervous. She looked annoyed. "Can we speed this up?" she said as she walked in. "We're double booked for a tasting at 11:30. I smiled, folded my hands on the table, and said nothing. Let her talk. Let her walk right in. Joanna passed out folders, one to each of us. Legal packets, neatly labeled tabs. Rachel flipped hers open with a manicured finger and let out a dry laugh. "This is old," she said, eyebrows raised. "These aren't even the final numbers." "Oh, but they are," Joanna said calmly. "And you're on camera, remember?" She pulled a remote from her jacket pocket and clicked a button. Audio played through the recessed ceiling speakers. Clean, clear, Rachel's voice. Say it was your idea. The room went still. Her fiancé looked sideways at her. What is that? He asked. Rachel blinked. Her mouth opened, closed. I don't. That could be anything. Would you like us to play the next one? Joanna asked. Or would you rather read the attached affidavit from the fund's issuing bank confirming the timestamp on the transaction and the audio recording? Silence. And then I spoke. Calm. Cold. You spent your father's memorial fund on peonies and photo ops, Rachel. And you forged my signature to do it. Her mouth twisted. You don't understand what weddings cost. You're right, I said. I don't understand. I paid for mine with love and crockpot chili in a church basement. Joanna pushed the final folder across the table. In case you're wondering what this meeting is really about, she said, tapping the last page, you'll find it spelled out in section 7B of the trust. Rachel grabbed the packet, read, and froze, because it was there, in James's words, his final clause, the trap. If she excluded me from this very moment, she forfeited everything. And now? The trap was closed. She looked like someone had slapped her. Not with a hand, with truth. Rachel stared at the claws, lips moving but no sound coming out. Her fiancé leaned over her shoulder, reading fast. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. What does this mean? He asked her. She didn't answer, so Joanna did. It means, she said, voice crisp, that because Rachel materially excluded Dorothy from this event, control of the trust reverts to Dorothy permanently. Rachel's mouth finally moved. You're doing this on purpose. Joanna blinked slowly. I'm an officer of the court. I'm doing my job. You don't even care. Rachel snapped, turning to me now. You're just trying to ruin everything. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw her not as my daughter, or the little girl with chocolate on her chin and scraped knees, but as a woman. A woman who lied, a woman who stole, a woman who had no idea what love without conditions looked like. I'm not ruining anything, I said, voice low. You did that when you made me disposable. She flinched. I needed that money, I nodded. You needed a mother too, and you threw her out. Her fiancé sat back, arms folded now, distancing himself inch by inch. Wait, he said, is this about the florist stuff? She said it was cleared. Joanna turned to him. Did you know about the forged signature? He blinked. No. She told me it was fine, that it was part of the memorial. It wasn't, I said. Rachel's voice cracked. It was one invoice. Joanna raised a brow. There are 12. The silence in the room was total now. Joanna closed the folder and folded her hands. At this point, Rachel, you've not only breached fiduciary trust, you've attempted to impersonate a trustee, misappropriated funds designated for memorial purposes, and misled your fiancé and vendors using fraudulently obtained money. Rachel's mouth opened, but the words didn't come. And finally, she realized. The room wasn't hers. The moment wasn't hers. She wasn't the one in white anymore. She was the one on trial. I stood slowly, picked up my copy of the folder, tucked it under my arm like it weighed nothing. But it weighed everything. Decades. Nights spent braiding her hair, teaching her to read, staying up late to fill out scholarship forms. And now? It was over. Joanna opened the final folder like she was setting down a verdict. There's more, she said calmly. This isn't just about the florist. She pulled out the screenshot of the wedding live stream invitation. Subject line, please watch via live stream. She held it up and read it aloud, like it was scripture. Rachel Lane knowingly and explicitly excluded Dorothy Lane from her wedding. On record, via email. She slid the printed email across the table to Rachel's fiancé. He read it. His face darkened. Rachel tried to reach for it. That was just a suggestion. I didn't mean. Joanna didn't flinch. She pulled out the photography contract. $12,000. Labeled, bereavement services. Signed, traced, fraud. Then came the Venmo log. $500 to her maid of honor. Memo line. Say it was your idea. Joanna laid them out in a line, like evidence in a courtroom drama. Neat, irrefutable, devastating. You misused over $60,000 in memorial funds, Joanna said. Funds held in joint trustee custody, with Dorothy Lane's name on every account. Rachel looked down, shaking her head. It wasn't like that. Joanna's tone changed, just slightly, from calm to razor sharp. Then how was it, Rachel? Because as of right now, we have multiple counts of financial misrepresentation, a formal petition to revoke your trustee privileges, and probable cause to open a case for civil fraud. I didn't think it would, she started, but her fiancé interrupted. You didn't think I'd find out? He said, voice low. You used your dad's death to pay for a flower wall? Rachel's hands flew up, frantic. I was trying to make it perfect. For who? I asked. For strangers on Instagram? She turned to me now, eyes glassy, panicked. You don't get it, Mom. You don't understand what people expect now. Everyone's watching. I raised you, I said, steady. I watched you. But you stopped watching me the day I stopped being useful. The room held still for a long, thick second. Then Joanna leaned forward. This trust is no longer yours to access, she said. Effective immediately. She pulled out a final sheet of paper. One signature line. Mine. I'll need you to sign here to formalize the reassignment, Dorothy. I picked up the pen. And I didn't tremble. Because this wasn't revenge. It was restoration of truth, of memory, of the quiet, dignified love James and I built. The kind that didn't need a flower wall to be real. I signed. Rachel watched the pen move across the page like it was writing her out of her own story. And in a way, it was. Rachel sat frozen, hands limp in her lap. Her fiancé had moved his chair a full foot away from hers, silent, watching, like someone realizing the house they bought was already on fire. She looked at me with wide, shining eyes, not with guilt, not with remorse, with fury. You're doing this on purpose, she hissed. You wanted to humiliate me. I didn't blink. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. She turned to Joanna. She's just mad because she's old and bitter and doesn't want me to be happy. Joanna stood. The shift in the room was immediate. I'm an officer of the court, she said coolly, and what I want is irrelevant. What matters is that you breached fiduciary duty and attempted to defraud a registered trust account. That's not emotional, Rachel. That's criminal. Rachel's fiancé looked at her, hard. You lied about everything. No, I didn't. You said the memorial fund was symbolic, that your mom gave it to you, that there was nothing to worry about. She's making it worse, Rachel snapped, pointing at me like a child in trouble. She always does this. I stood then, calmly, folder in hand. You know what I always did, Rachel? She swallowed. Didn't answer. I paid the bills when your dad was in chemo. I sat through 8 hours of college orientation so you didn't have to go alone. I took a second job when you totaled your car and cried about missing finals. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And I made 200 origami flowers for your rehearsal dinner. I stayed up folding until my hands cramped. You never used them. She opened her mouth, closed it. I wasn't angry when you sent that email, I continued. I wasn't even shocked. But I was done. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. You needed that money? I said. No, you needed a mother. And when you didn't get the version you could pose next to on Instagram, you threw her out. Joanna clicked her pen. The reassignment is processed, she said. Your access is revoked. You'll receive official notice by certified mail within 72 hours. Rachel stood abruptly, chair scraping back, her voice shaking now. I hope you're happy. I'm not, I said, but I'm whole. Her fiancé didn't follow her out. He sat there, staring at the papers like they were her obituary. And maybe, in a way, they were. The old version of Rachel, curated, had been exposed. And the woman who thought I'd always be her silent backup was no longer silent. By the next morning, the fallout had begun. It started quietly. An email from the wedding venue. Subject, deposit flagged, compliance audit in progress. Then a call from Lavonde Lux. They were, quote, suspending services pending financial review. That's how vendors talk when they smell blood in the water. Joanna had warned me. The moment we filed the reassignment, notifications would start going out. Not just to Rachel, but to any party with a financial tie to the trust. That meant every vendor, every planner, every boutique she used my name and James's memory to secure. Fraud travels fast in elite wedding circles, especially when it's printed on letterhead. By 1 p.m., she was trending in a private Facebook group for high-end Arizona wedding vendors. The post was polite but unmistakable. Word of caution. We just had a bride flagged in a multi-vendor financial audit. Name withheld for now, but check your accounts. At 2:17 p.m., I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it just once for Joanna. Rachel's voice was frantic, half-whispered. "You're blowing this up. Please, just stop. I'll fix it. I'll put your name back on the program. You can sit front row, give a toast, whatever. Just, please stop the legal stuff." She didn't get it. It was never about the toast. It was about the truth. And truth was finally on my side. That night, I got another message, this time from her fiancé's mother, a woman I'd only met once, briefly, at an engagement dinner I wasn't really included in. "I'm sorry. I had no idea. Please know our family does not condone what she did." It wasn't much, but it mattered, because slowly, the myth Rachel had built, of me being the bitter, irrelevant mother in the background, was unraveling. And what was left underneath? A very public mess. By the end of the week, 3 vendors pulled out. The custom gown was on hold due to, quote, billing inconsistencies. The honeymoon fund locked. All the sparkle? Gone. All the lies? Spotlit. And me? I was just sitting on my back porch, drinking iced tea, watching the hummingbirds come and go, while the daughter who tried to erase me watched her perfect day fall apart. One frozen account at a time. The trust was formally reassigned to my sole control by the following Tuesday. Joanna walked me through the final paperwork. Every box checked, every signature notarized. What had once been a shared stewardship was now mine alone. Rachel's access? Gone. But it didn't stop there. Joanna filed a formal complaint with the Family Trust Integrity Board, a state regulatory agency most people don't even know exists. But it exists, and it tracks everything. She listed Rachel's misuse of funds, forged documentation, and attempted impersonation of a trustee. We weren't seeking criminal charges. Not yet, but the board would now require her to complete mandatory financial counseling and submit monthly account statements for any future trust access requests. For the next 5 years, if Rachel even wants to apply for reinstatement, she'll need a signed apology statement, a completed financial ethics course, and a third-party fiduciary supervisor. It would no longer be me, because I had no interest in being the safety net she lit on fire. Joanna asked me if I wanted to freeze the rest of the assets. The future house fund, the emergency medical reserve, the education bursary James had set aside for potential grandchildren. I said no. Let them sit, untouched, locked away. Let her feel the weight of what could have been hers if she'd just treated love like something worth keeping. Rachel tried calling again that night. No voicemail this time, just a single text. "This isn't who I am. I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, and then I deleted it. Because she was right. It wasn't who she was, not the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest. Not the teenager who cried when she didn't get into her dream school and said, "At least I have you." No, this was who she became. A woman who looked at grief and saw an opportunity, who saw a mother and measured her value in silence, who thought control meant power and forgot that true power is earned, not inherited. I didn't need revenge. I had accountability. And Rachel? She had a very long, very quiet road back to honesty. One she'd have to walk alone.